outspoken changemakers, and welcome to Family Quality's Out With It, the podcast where conversations are raw, insights are bold, and the mission is clear: to foster a society where justice is non-negotiable and equality is the norm. I'm your host, Family Quality President and CEO, Jaymes Black, and I think it's time to come out with it. Today on Out With It, I'm excited to be chatting with 12-time Emmy-winning journalist and GLAAD Award recipient, Eliecer Marte. Eliecer is a bilingual journalist who embodies the essence of storytelling with passion and purpose. His journey into the world of journalism began in his native Dominican Republic, where, as a child, he would ingeniously transform his grandmother's garage into a makeshift television studio, captivating friends and neighbors with his innate talent for hosting. Driven by his childhood dream, Eliecer earned a double major in broadcast journalism and economics from the University of Miami. After graduating, Marte began his career in radio and television in New York, where for over a decade, Marte dedicated himself to serving the U.S. Hispanic audience as a national correspondent, anchor, and host for leading networks such as Univision and Telemundo. He is the first Spanish-speaking journalist to come out as gay while at Univision. Last summer, he published his first book, Confidencias, A Journey to Self-Discovery and Acceptance. This summer, he's launching a podcast, Daddy's on Duty. And last but certainly not least, in his long list of accomplishments, he and his husband have 2 children. Welcome, Eliecer.
James, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time to be here. And I think out of that amazing introduction, which I thank you very much, the best part is what you highlighted at the end, that we are parents, that we are daddies on duty. I am so happy. That is the best title I get to have. Actually, prior to coming down here in this little makeshift right now corner that I'm having, because everything right now, the house is just baby allocated in every sense of the word. I was just telling our nanny that came to help us. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be downstairs for a couple of minutes, maybe an hour or so. So just take care of the baby. And I just finished the last feeding right now. Her name is Cataleya.
Atalea.
She's 4 months and 2 weeks now. So I'm really happy having that experience. And then obviously we have Ethan. Ethan is it's that's another journey of that himself. He's gonna be 5 at the end of May. So yeah.
Wow. So we're gonna get into that. You are very busy. So you're deep in the throes of overnight feedings and doing all of that. And then you're also in the middle of, he's not terrible 2s anymore. He's 5.
He's terrible 5.
Terrible 5. Which is a thing. No one talks about the terrible 5s. The 2s are a thing, but the 5s, almost 6, they're starting to get their voices and this sort of independence and autonomy, right? They have they definitely have a little attitude, I think.
He has a big attitude. I think now it's everything I want in my way, or I don't want it at all.
Exactly. I can relate. I have 9-year-old twin boys, and we can share stories, certainly. Well, why don't we start with an icebreaker? So I don't know if you're a music lover, but putting together playlists featuring our favorite songs suggested by our podcast guests. So wanted to ask you, what song should I add from sort of your collection to the Family Quality playlist?
You can definitely add Beyonce. You can add Running, which is a remix by Beyonce. It's funny because it's a song that is not that new, and I recently started really jamming into it for the last couple of weeks as I walk to work or I'm on the treadmill. It's running, and you can add El Regalo Más Grande. I can send it to you via email by Jose Cifiano. That's his name. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it right. If not, I'm gonna confirm. But El Regalo Más Grande means the biggest gift. And El Regalo Más Grande was a song that I fell in love with a long time ago. And that song would always talk about the biggest gift. And to me, when we were in the process of our journey to becoming dads to Cataleya, I posted Christmas of 2021 a picture with my husband, and I just captioned it, "El regalo más grande, hope to come soon." We just manifesting that we wanted that gift. So when we announced that we were expecting Catalea, we used that song as a background to the announcement, and I actually talked about it on the book how this song is El Regalo Más Grande because of Catalea. So you can add that into it. It's in Spanish, but you can Google Translate
I would love to
what
add
it
that
means,
to it.
and I can definitely tell you more details about it, and I can tell you the singer and the writer, the songwriter as well, to make sure that I do have it right and correct.
Yes, please send that to me. I would love to listen to that. And I love Beyonce just as well. And I don't know what you think about Cowboy Carter. Maybe that's another discussion we'll have at another time. So I want to start with the same question that we ask all of our guests. Obviously, this is a platform to talk about challenging topics that we don't always talk about in other spaces. So now's the time to come out with it. So I want to ask you, in your experience, what's one thing you wish people knew or understood about journalism or parenthood or pride?
Well, when it comes to journalism, I think the biggest challenge is trying not to uh, get your emotions involved in the storytelling, right? You have to be objective. You have to be two-sided. You have to make sure you're just there to inform, right? So there are a lot of stories that, unfortunately, now that I'm a dad, now that I have kids, it's hard, to remove that human side from it. So I've learned that you don't have to remove the human side. As a matter of fact, I think humanizing a story is what connects with people. However, you do have to maintain that balance. But there are times that I'm telling a story, and honestly, I'm just trying to keep myself together on camera. And when I go off camera, I just break down because I've told stories from twins. Let's say I remember a story that I did. The twins that were about, they were between the ages of 2 and 4, if I'm not mistaken. They were found in trash bags. In the corner of a building in the Bronx. I cover stories where a 4-year-old was found dead because of a fire in his home, and so many other things that I don't want to get into because they're tragic, right? We're not here just to talk about that. But I think that's the biggest challenge, especially now as I'm a dad, as I have a family, just to see, wow, this happens to so many people, and I get to experience that, right? So, just the human aspect of journalism and trying to balance that out, it's the biggest challenge. When it comes to coming now as a person or pride as a person, the biggest challenge was finding my voice and being authentic to who I am. It took me years, right, to accept who I was as a gay man working first in the Hispanic industry, which is very challenging because they always want to keep the macho image of the macho man, and that's the stereotype of how they want to market you and how they want to make sure that you come out on television for, things are changing now, but still you have that you have to maintain yourself as a certain way. So that was the biggest challenge on a personal level, and just finding my voice, making sure that I was true to myself, which wasn't something that just happened overnight. It was a process, and I believe that it was in 2019 when I decided to come out and that I got married. That's when I really started being authentically me in all type of ways, on camera, behind the scenes, at meetings, and I think that's what's important right now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I want to get back to coming out, your life and growing up in the Dominican Republic as a young person, probably also going through this process of self-discovery even before you came out. But what I want to comment on and just say that when you talk about being a journalist and the stories that you have to tell and how you have to be objective in the human aspect of it, you pointed out something that I don't think that we realize, that journalists have to have this strength and mental fortitude that I don't think that we understand. Everything looks so effortless on television when you're telling the story and you are there in the studio or wherever you are, and it's like, wow, there's this aspect of strength that you have to have when you have to report the news as it is or as it's needed to be reported to inform folks like me. But I don't think we often think about the mental fortitude that you have to have as a journalist when you are reporting on stories like those children. And now that you're a father, I can't even imagine the connection to stories like that has to be even greater than
Yeah,
before.
a friend of mine, actually, my one of my best friend, he told me, you should usually have one of those sessions once a month that you get to speak about how you feel. Get a professional, a mental health professional, right? That's another thing we really don't talk about mental health much, and there's always the stereotype of mental health and why do you need help if you don't have any mental quote unquote issues, right? But my friend told me just so I can answer your question real quick, because of what you do, you should find someone that you can talk, not me, not as your friend, not your husband, just a professional, because you see so many things. And especially after the pandemic of the coronavirus pandemic. I mean, I work in New York City. This was the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I was literally broadcasting with people dying next to me. Remember how Central Park turned into an emergency hospital because of the pandemic. I saw it all, and I had to interview so many families. But just last week, I did a story on the migrant crisis in New York City and how this is affecting children. When you have children selling candy, selling snacks in the subway system, on the streets here in New York City, and you have kids that are newborn, 1 year old babies that are being carried in their mom's bags, just like you see that in Latin American countries, and they are, in the subway system, just exposed to danger. So here I am interviewing these families that they trusted me to tell their stories. First of all, it's hard for them to tell the story to television, knowing that they are undocumented, that they are afraid of something might happen because of that. And I remember, all of them agreed to talk to me, saying, I will talk to you, but just make sure you don't put my face or reveal my identity. I'm like, it's okay. I just want to know your story. So, so I had to do that. So I had the family side, the mother side of the story. Then I'm going to speak to the mayor or to the deputy mayor in New York City, so they can give me that side. And then I'm witnessing also how police are telling families to move from the subway system, to get out of from the streets, from sidewalks, and not to do that. So it's like you have all these different elements within a story. So you have to be strong mentally and being able to tell the story, and somehow just not let that affect you. But it's like there's so many elements that are involved when it comes to storytelling that people don't understand sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think they realize that journalists are storytellers. And I've always had a respect for journalism, but in this short time that we've talked about what you have to report and just the strength that it takes, I have a new respect for journalism. So thank you for everything that you do. I want to talk about life in the Dominican Republic as a young person and not coming out because that didn't happen until later. But my assumption is that you had some feelings about being different, like most of us do as we're young and and growing up, and we feel a little different than our peers even before we come out. We sort of, it's almost always with us, right? Tell me a bit about this machismo culture, right? That is really prevalent in Latin American culture, and how you navigated your upbringing.
So I always knew I was gay. I mean, I it's that's not a secret to me now. It's not, and I actually wrote that in my book. I always knew that I liked men, right? However, I just knew that it was something. At that time, I thought it was something wrong. I thought it was something evil. I thought it was something, just you name it. That's what I thought: illegal, evil. I was gonna go to hell and all that stuff. Why? Because first of all, I grew up in a Catholic environment. My family is very Catholic, right? And also when it comes to society, especially in a country like the Dominican Republic, you don't want to be as the gay of your neighborhood, or you don't want people to know that you are different, because you are afraid. You're afraid of for the family, how your family is going to react. You're afraid of how your neighbors are going to react, your community, and also because even though things are changing now and things are different, things are more open. I mean, I was born in 1986, so I lived in the Dominican Republic until 1996, 97. So I lived there until I was 11, 12, let's say. Um, back in the 90s, it's not like now, so it was way different. And so I always knew I was different. I had girlfriends, because that was just what society told me. You have to have a girlfriend. You have to bring a girlfriend to your brother's wedding. You have to bring a girlfriend. You have to like a girl because that's just how it is. When you're a little boy, since the beginning, they tell you, oh, you're gonna have a lot of girls because you're handsome. Because oh, what type of girls are you gonna like? And that's one thing I'm learning, and I've learned. Now as I'm a dad, I don't tell my son, or I'm not gonna tell Cataleya, let's say my son, oh, so what type of girl you gonna like, or Cataleya, what type of boy you gonna like? I'm like, so who are you gonna fall in love with? Make sure they respect you. Make sure they value who you are. So obviously those are things that now I'm gonna put into practice as a dad. Going back to the Dominican Republic, it was me just hiding who I was, because I needed it to fit into society and fit into the values of my family and my culture as well. So that was that process there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that because I don't think people understand for little black and brown boys how difficult it is to exist in that culture and navigate childhood, which is already, you know, monumental in itself to navigate the waters of childhood, and to be a black or brown boy, girl, and to have to navigate, in addition to who you are with this culture that does not allow us to be who we really are. It's really difficult. And I appreciate folks like you telling those stories because we need to hear more.
I can give you an example, and this is something that I also talked about. Um, when I wrote my book. When I was a little boy, I lived in an apartment building, right? So we lived on the fourth floor, and there was a gentleman that lived in a floor below. Let's say, I'm not going to make it so obvious, but my mom would always go and say hi to that gentleman's mom, right? I always wanted to say hi to his mom just like my mom did, but I did it because I used to love the way that man hugged me. Mind you, I was a little boy, right? But that hug was just more than a hug. We felt there was something there. When I tell you that I always knew I liked a man, that I was gay, I always knew about it, right? However, I had girlfriends, but me having girlfriends didn't take away what I was feeling towards men. Even as a little boy, I always liked being hugged by another guy, or just being close to another guy. But those are things that I had to literally put aside, lock it in a closet, and try to forget by having girlfriends. So it goes to tells you, it's a little side story, but yes, that's how it was
Yeah,
growing up.
I can resonate with that. And I remember telling my dad as we continued to talk about my sexuality and we started to reconcile. And I said, I've known this since I was in kindergarten. And he said, there's how would you know that? But to your point, we know. It's, I don't know how to explain the knowing, but it is a knowing. We know. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about you coming out. And so I'd love to learn more about your experience of coming out as a journalist on a Spanish speaking network. I mean, tell me, how did that feel? What was the sort of the catalyst to you deciding to do that?
So this was definitely a process, right? Growing up, I always knew that working in television would take more, especially back. I don't want to go back in days because it's going to sound like I'm 70 or 80. But I I started television in 2007 when I graduated from the University of Miami. But prior to that, I already knew how this industry was, especially in the Hispanic industry in the United States, right? If you're a guide, most likely they're gonna market you. The whole idea is that you have to be appealing to the Hispanic women that are going to be watching you, and just being a great storyteller or journalist, a host is not going to be enough. There's marketing behind it. So I already know that. They always told me since I was in college, if you come out of as a gay man, it's going to ruin your career. The Hispanic audience is not ready for that. The people that watch Spanish television is not ready to see a gay man as a main host telling a story. They're not going to believe you. They're not going to like you. They're going to shut you down. So I always already had that here. It was always there. Okay, I cannot come out. So once I started working my way up on television, the Hispanic media, in the Hispanic market, right? I first worked for cable, then I got into Univision Network. The whole idea was you can say that you have a boyfriend at that time. You can say that you're gay because the whole thing is that we want to make sure that people like you for who you are, who you look, not just the way you work, basically. So the people that were in charge of my career, or those that were the people advising me my career, making sure that I was going the quote unquote right way, because now I say quote right way because that wasn't the right way, at least not for me. They would tell me the steps that I had to take, that including not coming out. So things that included, for example, if I was walking on a red carpet, they would ask me, "So where's your girlfriend?" I would go, "Oh, she's at home. She couldn't make it today." If I was going to an event, so where's your girlfriend? When are we gonna see her? She's like, "Well, I don't put my private life in there." There was always a fabricated answer to that question. But then I
You
grew
had
up.
to make up stories. You had to make up stories to
Yeah,
say your girlfriend was a right.
yeah. So, but then I'm like, as I'm growing up, and I'm like, what's my meaning? Oh, mind you, I started my career doing entertainment news, right? Because that was the first job that I got. However, when I was doing entertainment news, even the producers and the executive producers were like, "You are such a solid journalist. You will be a better fit into hardcore news, human storytelling." Because that's just who you are, and that was always my passion. Even when I'm doing entertainment news, I like the human side of the celebrities. I'm not into the gossip, into the scandals and stuff, but that was the job that I had. So because I was in working for in the entertainment side of television, that was also another side of the story, that it was entertainment. So you had to be more appealing, more sexy. Let's go and be I was selected among the 25 most quote unquote beautiful people of People magazine, things like that, which helped me in my career, and it's something that I embrace and I'm very thankful for. But then there were some things that were in the back of that I had to hide. Once again, where's the girlfriend? What type of girls do you like? That was, those were the questions. Um,
Right.
then came in 2018. Then I transitioned from entertainment to hardcore news in 2016, right? So in 2018, I'm like going through this. I would say, transformation of my life. And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm a hypocrite? I'm a hypocrite because I am not who I am. Why am I telling the stories of other people? People are crying when they're talking to me. I'm suffering with people that have just lost family loved ones, and I'm going through all these major events of society, but I am not truthful, not even to myself. So I was already, I had this. It was so disturbing. I was not at peace with myself. It's like, when you have the little angel on one shoulder and then you have the devil on the other shoulder. It's like I was not at peace with myself. I'm like, something it's not right, and this doesn't feel right. And I was like, and I know what it is. I can't continue doing this and say that I'm a voice for the voiceless when I don't even have my own voice. I can't do this no more. So I was like, this has to end. My husband, it's not into the public industry. He's a very private man that unfortunately got exposed after my coming out process, and he had to deal with that. That was something that he had to deal with, and I'm always thankful of him, because he was able to support me, and he was dragged into this without asking. Um, So when I came out in 2019, I was literally going through that process that I was talking about. I decided to post on my social media a picture holding my husband's hand, just or hands, and saying, "This is who I am. I am such and such." It was a beautiful message. And next month I'm getting married. It was just like that. The company that I was working for, I had told them, listen, I am doing this. They wanted to. This is how and this is when I was like, no one's gonna have control over my life. They wanted because of they quote unquote they wanted to protect me. Maybe they had the best intentions, but I don't think it was the best way of doing it. They basically wanted to write for me what I had to say or how it was gonna come out, and I said no because you don't feel what I feel. This is me, and I'm sure if a heterosexual employee is going to say, "I'm going to get married next month," you're not going to write for that heterosexual employee what he or she is going to say to announce their wedding. So why do you have to do it for me? So that was the conversation that we had that day at work. So they kind of were like, "Oh yeah, he's kind of right, right?" But I really didn't care whether I was right or not because, or how they thought if I was right or not. I just care about what I was feeling, and this is my life, and I have to take control of it, and this is how I'm going to do it. So that day after that meeting, I went home, and on my way home, I wrote that message and I posted it on social media. That was my coming out process. 10 minutes later, it was all over the magazines and all over. Just Google it. Eliecer Marte comes out as gay. He's gonna get married next month. So it was a huge thing. So everyone started calling my husband. People that knew my husband, right? They're like, "Why are you on? They're talking about you on People Magazine. They're talking about you on Mundo Hispano and a bunch of newspapers and stuff." My husband was like, "Let me just turn this off. We're gonna go for a walk and let's go have a drink. What is going on?" And I'm like, "Well, this happened." And he's. So that night we didn't answer no one's calls. It was just us talking, and literally we went out to have a couple of drinks. I had 2 beers, I remember, and we were just trying to, just get it together. And that was the coming out process. Did I get a lot of messages? Yes, a lot of negative messages. So many negative messages. But you know what I got the most? People writing to me, "Because of you, I'm not killing myself today. Because of you, I am doing this as well. I thank you for being a voice. Thank you for your message, and thank you for allowing me now to be truthful to who I am, and also talk to my family." So even though I got so many negative messages, the messages that I got of others, I don't want to say I was the coming out shield to them, but I did help someone at least feel better about themselves. So that's what I take from that coming out process.
Absolutely. I mean, this is about one, controlling your own destiny. You wouldn't let the company write the post for you. And there is we talk a lot about family equality, about shifting the narrative and how we are all responsible as LGBTQ plus people of helping this country shift the narrative as it relates to what they what they feel and how they represent our community. And I want to talk a bit about representation because you won an Emmy and a GLAD award from our friends over at GLAD for your coverage on diversity, equity, inclusion, pride. And I want to know how how do you handle discussing LGBTQ plus issues and topics in your reporting, thinking about you're a member of the community, thinking about representation, and there's still some cultural taboos around these subjects, and how do you balance that?
So for that award in particular, the GLAD award, I'm gonna tell you a story. So that was the first time that at that a company that I worked for, they had done an LGBTQ plus series highlighting the LGBTQ plus community. I had pitched something similar 2 years prior. The person that was in charge of the editorial decisions at that time told me our audience is not ready for that. That was the answer that I got, right? And I was like, okay, so if our audience is not ready for that, this is what we do. We need to help them understand our community, help them understand what diversity looks like. They said they're just not going to get it. Our audience are older Hispanic men and women that are not going to understand what being LGBTQ plus means. I was like, so that was my answer. So basically, they didn't allow me to do it. It was not quote unquote the audience didn't understand. 2 years later, I had a person that came in, another person that was in charge of the newsroom, and I pitched the story. I pitched the series with another colleague of mine, and that person said, "Let's go for it." You know, so those that are in power, that are leaders, especially in companies such as newsrooms, where so many things can happen the way you say a story, need to understand that their decisions are not just going to impact the employees that are working in the newsrooms, but the way they make decisions is going to impact the audience overall. It's going to impact whoever is watching that television station, right? So perhaps the audience was not ready. I believe the audience was ready. I mean, this was in 17, 18. But even if the audience is not ready for something, then that's why we are there to inform, to educate, to empower, right? So representation is so important in so many ways, and when we won that award, I was so happy, not because of the award itself, but it was a lot of work that we put into it. That's number one. But the series, the stories that we did were so well planned. We really thought of everything about it. The way we wrote it, we made sure we were respectful. We made sure we informed. We made sure that people who didn't understood what was anything from voguing, from because we touched on so many areas. I've learned so much. I even went to voguing class for the series. I vogued myself, so it was beautiful. I've learned about the history of voguing at the piers here in New York City. Pose was the show, the series Pose was so big at that time, so we've learned from them too. It was beautiful. So it goes. I mean, I love talking about this because I'm so big into representation. I mean, I guess I'm the check mark for so many things. I am a minority because I'm Dominican. I'm gay. I'm the color of my skin. I speak two languages. I have an accent. So I embrace representation to the max, I would say, and I want to make sure that those that are in power understand how important it is for these stories to be told. So.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about another important representation. A piece of representation is LGBTQ plus people who are parents. And I don't think there's enough of that representation. But let's talk about the greatest joys of our lives, which are those the kiddos, our kiddos. And so you and your husband Eric have two adorable children. And so how did you form your family? And then also let's talk about what are some of the joys and challenges of parenthood, because I don't think that we often talk about the challenges or maybe surprises, right? That even as an LGBTQ plus parent that you encounter, and you didn't know it, right? But how did you form your family, though?
Um, so quick story. So just before I forget, Catalea got her. She turned 4 months, right? So she got her shots. So when we go to the doctor's office, and this is one of those moments that, oh, okay, it's part of it, right? So we're there. Catalea is Marta Martinez, right? My last name and Eric's last name. And when the receptionist is calling, Catalea Marta Martinez, so she's like, oh, who's dad? Who's mom? And we're like, dad and dad. She's like, oh, that's beautiful, but it's obviously it's a norm. It's what they see every day. A mom and a dad, or just a dad or just a mom, right? But that happened to us just 2 days ago.
Right, and I know Tanya's going to kill us, but I don't want to get into another conversation about representation. Or actually, I do want to. I do want to, and maybe we'll talk later. But that's why I think the representation that you're speaking about is so important, because it does inform the public. And perhaps if they saw more of us that were parents, they wouldn't assume that there was a mom and dad, that they would just say who are the parents. And we hear that from families all the time, that there's an assumption. And sometimes maybe in New York, places like New York where you are, the receptionist or nurse were like, "Oh, that's beautiful." And other places they're like, "Wait, what? There's two dads or two moms." That's why I think that seeing more of us as parents can help shift the narrative.
That's right. Yeah. So about our family. So Ethan came through the foster system here in the New Jersey area. Our home is in New Jersey, actually. He came when he was one. He's gonna be five at the end of May. He actually came with a sister. His sister was reunified with her biological dad, right? After 2.5 years. And Ethan, it's now in the adoption unit, so Ethan would officially become our child once all this, there's a lot of legal terms there that I cannot get into, but he will become adopted, God willing, very hopefully within this year. After 3 years in the foster system. Catalea was born through international surrogacy. She was born in Colombia. That's where we decided she was going to be born. There were other options or countries to the birth, but we decided Colombia. We love Colombia. That's the reason her name is Cataleya, because of the Colombian orchid uh, from Colombia. And that's how we always know we wanted to be dads from the beginning. And when we were getting married, we got married ironically in the Dominican Republic. That was another big issue, because the Dominican Republic, gay marriage is not accepted. We did a celebration. We did a ceremony, right? So it wasn't a legal wedding. However, we got a lot of backlash for going there to do that, but it's fine. I am all about going the opposite way of things. I guess that's the way I am. But when we were there, we were driving towards an area, and the wedding planner told us something that it really got to us. She said, "So this is called the Placenta Bridge." And we're like, "What is the Placenta Bridge?" She said, "Well, this is a bridge where a lot of kids are dropped off, actually with the placenta and everything. A lot of newborn." And we were like, "What?" She said, "Yes, unfortunately, only those that are light skinned are picked up by people. Those that are darker, they just stay here, and they just, people forget about them, right?" And that's in my country, the Dominican Republic. So when we heard that, we're like, okay, this is definitely gonna put us into our purpose of helping someone adopting. So we originally wanted to adopt in the Dominican Republic. Unfortunately, adoption in the Dominican Republic for same-sex couples is, it's not possible. So then we went the other route. So we're like, who can we help? So let's help someone from the foster system, and that's how we started our family, and then eventually through surrogacy. And we are hopeful that our family will grow a little bit more, because we do want another child at some point.
I love that. What's the biggest surprise that you've encountered being a parent, becoming a parent, or as you sort of navigate parenthood?
Obviously that you can read a lot of books, but it's not gonna get you ready for what it is. It's just, I mean, yes, read. Of course, we read so many books, but that's not how it's practice. It's every day. It's different. It's every day something new. I mean, the first month was brutal. Cataleya was on the clock every 3 hours. That was every 3 hours. It didn't matter if it was daytime, nighttime. I took 4 months off from work, so that helped us a lot. And I'm glad I did, because otherwise I don't think I was going to be able to handle it. Because we wanted to make sure we were there. We had help from family members, but we said no. We wanted to do this at least the first 3 4 months. We want this to be us. We want us to be everything. So we did that for the first 3 months. Then after we had Eric's mom to come for a couple of weeks. Then my mom came and she helped. So that when it comes to challenges through this journey, those are the challenges. The day of challenges, the first fever, things that you're not ready for. When she's crying, it's like, oh, she's crying. The shots, when you see that, it's like it hurts, and we were like, I told my husband, I love Cataleya so much. It's that type of love that it's like it hurts type of love. Like it's like, oh my god, my
You can't
heart.
explain
I
it,
know.
right?
It's like I want to cry type of like love you. That's how we love our child, especially Catalina, because she's only 4 months, right? Um, Other challenges, and this is something that even with Ethan, as he approaches kindergarten, I told my husband that I want to make sure that I'm there for the meetings at school. I want to make sure that when they are teaching about families, they are taught about the different types of families. I want him and her to know that it's not just mom and dad. There could be a dad and a dad. There could be a family that is just a grandmother because your parents died and now the kids are with grandmother. So I told Eric I'm going to be the one of every PTO and every meeting possible because I want to make sure teachers know that my child is in their classroom, and I want to make sure that they are aware of how important it is that the education they receive involves knowing about being different. So I'm already in that mindset because yes, it is a surprise. I mean, we get even from family members, we get questions such as, "Oh, so whose sperm is it?" Right? Like things like that. So who's the
People
dad?
ask questions that are very invasive, and they don't I guess they don't they're maybe they're
Yeah.
curious, like maybe it's best intentions, and but some of those questions are very, very
Yeah,
invasive.
especially our family. I mean, we are very Hispanic, so our families are very traditional Hispanic families. The other day we were at a get together, and someone said, "Oh yeah, because they mix the both of the sperms, and that's how they created it." We were just like, "Yeah, that's exactly how it happened." So things like
Don't even get into it. Yeah,
that.
that's exactly right. But you said something really important about the love that you feel for your daughter, and I believe anyone who's watching this who's a parent can relate. But why I feel that, again, representation, while the work of family equality is so important, there are LGBTQ plus people in this country today who want to become parents, and there are barriers preventing them from becoming a parent. And for folks who are watching who may not be LGBTQ plus, or do not understand our challenges, or wonder why would we want to become parents, think about the love that you have for your child. Like, we want to experience that same type of love, and as you're saying, it is unexplainable, the type of love that you have for your kids, and we want to experience that as well, just like any other parent in this country.
And I think I have, I would say, not a perfect example, but I can tell you this. And it's gonna sound cliche, but love is love. That's number one. And because you are LGBTQ plus, doesn't make you less of a person to love someone, especially a child. Ethan came from parents whom are heterosexual, right? And he was abandoned. He was not loved. He came through, he was living a really bad life, and I'm glad he came into a home because had he not been placed in our home, who knows what his future would have been like. He could have been dead right now, right? So he came from parents that are heterosexual, and he didn't get love there. He was not loved there. He came here, and two dads love him so much. He has such a bright future now, and he knows that he's the king of this home. So I mean, those that are unfortunately have that mentality that because you are LGBTQ plus, you cannot be a great mom, a great dad. I'm so sorry, but I can prove you wrong by just showing you how my kids are and just showing you how much we love our kids.
And those are the stories that need to be told about where Ethan, a kid like Ethan, came from. And straight parents don't have the same barriers. If they want to have a child or foster a child or adopt a child, no barriers, maybe financial barriers, right? If those exist. But there's this world where a lot of times they are, think about LGBTQ plus kids who are being kicked out of their home from their straight parents. And we've met many of them who are then are adopted by two dads and two moms, and their life flourishes and their life changes, and we have all this love to give. So I thank you for that, sharing that part of the story, because child welfare is a big piece of our work too. And what we try to impress upon people is that we need to remove the remaining barriers. 13 states still have barriers for our community in terms of fostering and adopting. We need to remove those for kids like Ethan. Period. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you. I know we're kind of getting close to time. I know that you're a person who believes in living authentically, And for anyone who is watching and wants some motivation and support advice on how to live their lives authentically, what advice would you share with them?
I think, obviously this is a process for everyone, that needs to understand that there is nothing more beautiful than just being truthful to who you are. There were so many times in my life that I was not who I am because I wanted to make sure I had a job, because I wanted to make sure someone saw some value in me, whether it was a company, whether it was my supervisor, whether it was a friend, a group, right? But at the end of the day, you start to realizing that the best thing that you can bring into this world is just being who you are, and there is no one else that can be you, and that's the most beautiful thing. Yes, we talk about authenticity, but being authentic is just living your true self, and not having to put a mask on, just cover who you are, depending on where you are or the type of different scenarios where you might find yourself. It's just being you at all times, and I know it takes time. It's different for everyone, but I truly believe that authenticity is something that it's practice on a daily basis. It's just not just being authentic in just one scenario. It's something that it's just you. It's something that you carry. It's something that you breathe. And I would say that the biggest virtue that we have as humans is just being who we are, because no one can be a copy of us, and that's just beautiful.
It is beautiful, and I love that you said that authenticity is a practice. It's something that we work on and have to work on towards every day. So I've so enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule and your daddy schedule, which I know is really really hectic, to talk with us. So before you go, I want to ask you a closing question. The movement for equality obviously hinges not only on fierce honesty but also on fierce hope. And so what I want to ask you is, what's one thing that you're fiercely hoping for in the future, and what's one thing that you'd like to change in the world?
um if I can change something, and what I'm hopeful for, is that when my kids have my age, hopefully way sooner, we don't need to have these conversations anymore. That it's okay to be who you are. It's okay for you to love whoever you want to love. I hope that I don't have to have any child deciding whether they want to love a man or a woman because society tells them to. I just hope that they can love someone because they just love someone, period. So that's what I hope. And I hope it doesn't have to be in 37 years from now, because that's my age right now. But you know what I mean. Hopefully it can be tomorrow or just today.
Absolutely. I here. I totally agree with you. All right, so you are now officially part of the Family Equality family, and I'm so grateful for your time, your visibility, your voice, the representation that you have so bravely offered to our community. And it is my firm belief that true equality can only be achieved if we work together, individuals, businesses, nonprofits, community groups, legislators. It's going to take all of us, and I want to thank you for being part of the journey. And before I let you go, are there any projects that you want to share, or talk a bit about your podcast or your book, or anything that you want to share with our audience before we go?
Well, for those that would like to read, whether they speak Spanish or not, the book is really easy to read. So even if you need Google Translate, you can get it. Confidencias is available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or eliecermarte.com. But next month in June, I don't know when the podcast comes out, so I don't know if it's going to be next month, this podcast. But in June, now for Pride Month, my podcast, Daddy's on Duty, which really goes into how we started our family process and what it is now to be dads. It's going to come out. It's very personal. It's very emotional. It's a beautiful conversation that I convinced my husband to have with me, because, like I mentioned before, he doesn't like none of this stuff. And actually, he turned out to be a really good person on camera and on the mic. So Daddy's on Duty is going to come out next month. So if you can just check it out, I really appreciate it. And just send us a message. And I think it's going to be a beautiful project that a lot of people can benefit from.
Absolutely. And we will ensure that our audience knows when you launch and they can all watch it. Thank you. Thank you to Eric, too. And I will let you get back to the babies. This was so amazing. Thank you. This has been a Family Quality production. As a leading national organization for current and future LGBTQ plus families, we work to advance equality through advocacy, support, storytelling, and education to ensure that everyone has the freedom to find, form, and sustain their families. I'm your host, Family Quality's President and CEO, Jaymes Black. Our producers are the communications team at Family Quality, and our amazing music is designed by Michael Koppelman. Special thanks to Clockwork for supporting this podcast, and special thanks to you for listening. The fun doesn't have to stop here. Follow Family Quality on socials at Family Quality for up-to-date resources, community events, insights from the movement, and ways to get involved. You can also follow me at Jaymes Black on Instagram and TikTok. Remember, this is more than a podcast. It's a platform for change. So rate, subscribe, and review this podcast to help us spread the word. As always, you can support Family Quality and the amazing work we're doing on behalf of LGBTQ plus families every day by donating at donate.familyquality.org. You can also reach out to chat more about potential sponsorship opportunities. But for now, I'll catch you next time.